Are you familiar with that old-fashioned Midwestern recipe that's called magic bars? I think there's a real big mistake with that recipe. There's a flaw, and I don't know if you're familiar with the flaw as well, but I'm going to talk about that flaw. And I think actually the cure is this recipe for vegan magic bars. Yes, I actually think making this recipe vegan is the cure for what I consider to be the flaw in the traditional magic bar recipe. So I'm going to tell you what the flaw is here in a second. And I'm also going to show you what I think the result or how to fix that flaw is. So let's get to it in just 1 second. It begins with making the crust. And actually, I guess I would say I have several fixes for this recipe. A lot of traditional recipes use a couple and a half of graham crackers. I like pushing it up to 2 cups of graham crackers crumbs. That way you get a nice thick crust, and that kind of counterbalances all the sweetness and richness of this recipe. So to that, I'm going to pour in, this is a half cup of melted vegan butter. You can absolutely use just melted coconut oil, and that would be just fine. Let's give that a stir. Now, sometimes I'll do this in the food processor because it'll just get that butter spread throughout this mixture much more quickly, but it's so easy. Just if you've got graham cracker crumbs, you can just stir in the melted butter and just make sure it's all coated. The more you can get that butter distributed throughout the graham cracker crust or crumbs, the more this crust will be cohesive and stay together when it's baked. Okay, that looks pretty good. So to that, I'm going to add, actually what we're going to do next is just put this right into the pan. I have a 9 by 12 baking pan here, and you can see I've lined it with parchment paper. I've also put these nice little clips on because that kind of helps get them out of your way when you're spreading it. And let's get that in there. I just use the back of the spatula to press the crust all the way evenly across the pan. But sometimes you'll notice that it's really not spreading all that well. It's kind of sticking to the back of the spatula. And so what I like to do in that situation is I have a little bit of water nearby, and I just kind of wet my fingers and just smash it in. It kind of helps you get a nice, I think the more you can kind of press this into the pan, you get a nice thick, stable crust. There we go. Just a few smashes. And like I feel like baking is such a great way to get rid of your frustrations from the day. So if you're frustrated with your boss or anybody, you can just smash away here. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to set this aside. Actually, no, I'm not going to set this aside because you're going to come in handy right next. Now we're going to build on layers. So that's why these are called magic layer bars. There's actually seven layers that we're going to be working with. And the crust is layer number 1. On top of that, I'm going to add some semi-sweet chocolate chips. This is 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And I just like to spread them across evenly. Just pour them in there and just make sure they're distributed across equally. The next layer is coconut flakes. I think this is really important. I've made these with and without. I find the coconut flakes are really important because these bars are really rich. And I use unsweetened coconut flakes. And I feel like when you have the coconut flakes, it makes them, believe it or not, a little bit less rich. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive because coconut is pretty rich. However, because it's not sweetened, it just takes away from some of the sweetness. Okay, next we're going to add, this is a cup of chopped pecans. Same thing, we're just going to spread those around evenly. Just want to make sure every bite is going to get a little bit of pecans in there. And here is the next thing we're going to do is, and this is my secret ingredient. This is basically Baker's semi-sweet chocolate, although I will say they have a bittersweet and that would be really good here too. A lot of recipes, the very next thing they're going to do is they're going to add butterscotch chips. I think those are way too sweet. So if we're going to, what I'm going to do is add these chocolate chunks, dark chocolate chunks all across the top. I think that cuts off some of that sweetness and it turns these bar into, something that's, it's still rich, but it's not quite as sweet, believe it or not. And then the other thing I want to talk with you about, another one of my favorite things to do is to either chop up some pretzels. In fact, you can see that in these bars, I have chopped pretzels on top. It's very good. The chopped pretzels breaks down the sweetness quite a bit. But today I thought we could try just some plain old salted peanuts on top. Again, I think anything that you can do to avoid things like butterscotch chips is going to make this recipe so much more easy. It takes away from some of the sweetness that we're going to be dealing with. Okay, I think that's enough. That's around 3/4 of a cup. And then of course the finale is, what I'm using here is sweetened condensed milk. It's a coconut milk I got at the store. So it's coconut sweetened condensed milk. You can make homemade. I've got a great recipe for homemade sweetened condensed milk. It works just fine. But this is just a small, regular can of store-bought sweetened condensed milk. What I did is I put it in this bowl and I microwaved it for about 20 seconds to help make it thinner. So we're just going to pour that over the top. Oh, you can just see that is just going to be amazing. This stuff is going to bake and just deliver a delicious caramel flavor in every bite. And it also works really well to add, again, we were talking about cohesiveness, so the bars don't crumble too much. So this really kind of is like the glue that keeps everything together, the syrup. So I'm just looking to cover this pretty uniformly. Just going to add some drizzles here. Lovely. And if you see some spots that you missed, you can kind of spread it over. Sometimes the edges have a tendency to not get very much. So like I can see I didn't get as much over there. Just make sure you get some in every spot. Okay. Then one other tip I love is you can add some of this coarse sea salt. Again, we're just trying to break up the sweetness, so you can just sprinkle that over the top now, or you could do it after they're baked. It's fine either way. This goes into an oven that's preheated to 350 Fahrenheit. And I bake these for about, I think, 25 to 30 minutes. I'll confirm that and I'll put it in the notes to make sure, but I'm going to say 25 to 30 minutes and just check the notes to make sure that I got that right. So let's put this in here. I'm going to set the timer for 25. That way I'll check them at 25 minutes and make sure that they're doing okay, not burning, that everything's fine. And usually I'll let them bake for like another 5 minutes. The reason I love to have the parchment paper and I love to have the parchment paper hanging over the sides of the pan is because then I let them cool in the pan for at least 10 minutes. I would say more like 20 to 30. You'll know when they're ready to come out of the pan when you lift it out of the pan and they don't sway. They should come out pretty stiff. So that if the whole pan comes out, then you're good. But if it's still kind of like, it starts to droop, yes, in the middle, you know that they're not ready to come out of the pan yet. But I love once they're firm and you take them out of the pan, then you can just slice them. They're so easy to store. I love that about this recipe because you can store them in the fridge for probably up to a week. And otherwise you can cut them into pieces and store them in the freezer because they are very rich. I like to cut them into small slices and then wonderful to take to parties. I'm telling you, these are the bars that people will come rushing up to you and saying, where did you get this recipe? They're so good. And you don't even have to tell everybody how easy it is to make. Because I mean, what is it? Just spend a few minutes and they're in the oven. They bake for 25 minutes and then you're ready to take them to your party. And you can just tell that they're so gorgeous and delicious and buttery and rich. So I'm gonna have to take a taste test of this one. It's calling my name. Let's do this. Mm. Mm-hmm. Wow. That is out of control delicious. Oh my gosh. I love that so much because you get the salt from the pretzels and the buttery crust, and then you've got the like the double batch of chocolate in there and the coconut. It all comes together so perfectly. I just love this recipe. It is, like I say, a showstopper. I understand why it's such a Midwest tradition. What I think is the fatal flaw is that it's just too sweet with the butterscotch chips. So we're replacing that with another layer of semi-sweet chocolate chunks. Transforms this into an elegant dessert that you'll want to share with anybody. It's so good. So I'm sure you could have some questions like, can you make this gluten-free? Of course, you can substitute the graham crackers for, some gluten-free cookies, like maybe wafers or things like that, that you can then crumble up and create a crust with that. And then obviously you'd want to use gluten-free pretzels, or go ahead and do like I did today and use the peanuts on top. That would be great, and adds a nice little crunch. The other thing is, I mentioned that you can use coconut oil. Today I used this. I've never used this brand before. This Melt Organic, basically plant-based butter, and I thought it turned out really good. And I loved using this butter. It's a great option. I found it at Sprouts. But coconut oil is another really good option that would work really well in this recipe. So that keeps it super simple. Yeah, this was delicious, and I am so glad that you joined me today. And I hope that you'll leave a comment and let me know what your favorite toppings are on Magic Bars. I actually have met some people who had never heard of Magic Bars. I was shocked, but I've grown up having these around all the time, so I'm just assumed that everybody knew about them. So have you heard about them before? And if so, have you made them? And just leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Magic Bars. And yeah, that's it for today's recipe. And I'm so glad you joined me. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up or subscribe for more recipes coming your way every week. Now, on to more bites. Mm.